I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Adams.
Here.
Bartlett.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Lonergan. Here. Oldman. Scott.
Here.
Wonk.
Here.
Gormowski.
Here.
Williams. Mayor Izzard.
Here.
City Attorney Davis.
Here. Real quick, just a thank you to Alderman Williams and Alderman Adams for getting the word out on Amory. I spoke with one of the reps there last week, and they're getting some phone calls. So that's a good thing. Appreciate that help. I just want to, we lost out. We applied for 3 grants last year. We got one, the boat dock. The other 2 we did not get. Would you like for us to move forward and go out for those again this year? Because I'll have to get with Greg Hillis with Minton Associates to put a package together. It won't be probably as formal as they were last year. Not a lot of money, we're just reapplying, but.
What were those other grants for?
One was for the trail and one was for the swimming pool.
If I could say,
Yep.
I think we should apply for the trail.
Okay.
But just like listening to Kelly at the last meeting, he said it's highly unlikely that we would get the grant. And the pool for that fund, or the state has a pool to pay for that grant, it's $750,000 for the whole state. And so our grant application for that Fight Street of the trail would have been like a quarter or a third of the available pool. So if we don't get the grant, I say we go ahead and just take the money out of the gambling fund and finish off the trail.
Oh, we were finished with the trail.
I would say go ahead and go with the
3
grants.
phases.
On your question that you had, Mayor, I would go ahead and proceed with putting the grants in, it's not gonna
Is this
hurt.
one going down with the
Okay.
bridge?
That was paid, that was
This
paid
is the
for.
one going, this would be.
And I know Lori I know she can't be here this evening, I know she has comments. I know the deadline's coming in March, and I just wanna get something to us in the first meeting in February, and we can discuss it, and maybe the proper way is to discuss it in committee. But I just needed an idea, cause I got the letters saying no to the trail and no to the swimming pool, and Greg Hillis has reached out to the trail administrator and indicated what some of the reasons were why we didn't get those, but however you guys want to play.
I think we proceed with that, it never hurts to put the grants in. I mean, we can always put it in for grants. We get denied or we get paid, okay?
But definitely
There's
grants
one.
for the public, for the community, both of them, the pool and the lake trail.
Yeah,
Tell them to proceed. Those are the park grants through DNR, right?
yeah, they are. Oslad and trail. Right.
Can we finish up with the question Dr. Cook? Alderman Cook asked. What was your question about the 3rd phase of the trail?
The bridge,
Yes.
is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
The third, completing that bridge,
Mhm.
making it go all the way around it.
Yeah, that's what the initial plan we did when we did the trail was, it had like 11 or 12 segments, and we broke it up into 3 phases. And the bridge, and that segment going down to the bridge and up, so is a final segment.
And I know there's concern there.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
What's the concern?
That the people on the south side don't want it.
Well, they can talk to their alderman.
We don't have an alderman out there.
That's great.
But I wouldn't, I mean, if,
I talked to one of the people who spoke at the meeting, and he said that he came out and he spoke against the trail at the time, but then he said he's been on that trail several times. He said he went out there with his kids, they were out there with slingshots, lobbing stones into the lake, and they went all the way there and all the way back. And he said the saddest part was that they couldn't get to the trail from their house. So there are some people out there who want it, and there's some people who don't want it. So, but the important thing, I think, for us, is people in the city want it. Have you gone out to the trail and used it at all?
I haven't used, I've been out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you go down that last segment, it
I've been
flows,
down there.
I mean, it has.
I don't have a problem with
Okay.
applying for grants.
Okay.
that was the question.
Right,
We can hash it out in committee as far as if we move forward,
but if we listen to what Kelly Hall last time, he said it's a long shot if we do get it. And instead of saying, oh, we're just gonna apply every year for this trail and we're never gonna get it, but let's keep applying. It's like, let's just finish the trail. Either we get lucky this time or we don't, and we just do it ourselves. and then we start planning for a trail into town.
Well, that's for another discussion.
Sure, love to have the discussion. So, and then we also talked about the pool. We can apply for that grant, but we never completed the pool study. We never did the public input session, and we never finished up the planning with, Aquatic Waters, or what's the place out of Kansas City? Any
You
remember?
know more than,
Yeah,
'cause
we did a pool study, but we only did half of it. We didn't do a public input session, and we never finalized the pool study. We applied for the grant because it came out of the blue, but then that kind of truncated the planning we were doing with the Kansas City pool design firm. But we had a really big process where we did a national.
Let's go ahead and
search.
move with the grant, and then let's have a committee meeting on special studies or parks and lakes for the pool and for the trail, and see which way we wanna proceed. But right now, the question at hand is proceed with the grants or not?
Yes,
do.
proceed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. City attorney's report.
Thank you, just want to add one item. From the hearing we just held, the second reading of the appropriations ordinance is on the agenda. We need to amend from first reading because we discovered a mistake in one person's salary that increased the appropriation by $2,153.80. And basically what happens is we mistakenly took the salary from the previous year instead of this year as the component. So when we go into that, first would just be a motion to amend the ordinance by $2,153.80. Second, $2,053.80. And then a second and a vote on that, and then we would have second reading of the ordinance.
I'm sorry, Dan, what ordinance was that?
The appropriations ordinance, that's,
Budget.
item number two.
Budget.
Item
Fire.
number two.
That's what I wanna make sure we're at before I step on anything. We are talking budget.
No, this is, item number 2 under the,
Okay. Can I ask something about the budget, because I am curious about that? And you're talking about the appropriation.
About the
budget.
appropriation.
Okay, about capital improvement, when we move funds from one department to another department, does that basically say that we have to take this again? We voted on a budget last council at the funds that were set for each department. Now, we got an email that funds were moved from one department to another department, so do we have a second vote, or do we do another vote?
It's how, we have to move to amend.
But that's just part of the amendment.
Be part of the amendment?
Had nothing to do,
Okay, can I ask where that other $18,000 is going?
police department,
For what?
the,
Car wrap.
car wrap and everything, and install of, equipment. So the 2020 cars, the equipment that we have in the 2017s, I think is what we're trading in, or 16s. We're trading in 19, the equipment in the car doesn't fit the 2020s. So that's why there's an increase in there.
So that's why ESDA is losing $18,000 and going to the police department.
Right.
So what was the money for ESDA for again?
Pardon?
What was the ESDA?
It was for doors for a storage shed unit at the water plant that's been in the budget for the last couple, well, it was pulled last one, but it was in this one. I think it was pulled last time, wasn't it, Phil?
No, it wasn't in the last
It
one.
wasn't in the last one, but it was in this one.
This is the only time it's been in.
Well, I would just want to make sure, I wanted to be clear on the fact that when we move money from one to another, we not start over again, or who made that decision to move it. That's what I was looking at.
I did,
Okay. All right.
to try to balance out the budget, to try to balance it out.
Okay.
Committee reports tonight, planning and public works, Alderman Scott.
One item, discuss the 2020 MFT street maintenance program. Take that one, Bill.
Prepared your preliminary maintenance, motor fuel tax maintenance program for year 2020. Program total cost is $225,000 to be appropriated for the oil and chip portion of the street improvements this year. Predominant area that we'll be doing will be north of the railroad tracks and west of Main Street, or a few things downtown. As you know, we kind of divide the town into quadrants, and Les and a gentleman from our office go around and do the street inspections. So we'll be finishing up those documents and submitting them, but that's the oil and chip program for the year. So One other item, just real quick, just as an informational item, East State Street is scheduled for an April 24th of 2020 levy. That will, once that's done, it should be awarded within about 30 days or so. So we expect construction to start on or about the end of May, beginning of June. That'll last the construction season, will be wrapped up before Christmas. We applied for some additional funding related to that project. What was that? Yeah, 300 and some thousand, I believe. So it saved us use of some motor fuel tax funds you guys might normally have had done. You guys were, they extended your ITEP, amount of ITEP funds you received, and then we also used some federal STU funds. Okay.
Public protection, Alderman Hopkins.
Discuss waiving bids and accepting proposals for emergency siren maintenance and pole replacements. I'm gonna let Phil McCarty take this one and fill us in on it. If you guys remember last year, we had a tower that fell down at Morton and Libby. Luckily, no one was hurt. Everything you received in the email was to address these issues with these towers and try to get them updated.
So I think you got forwarded the brief information that I passed along to the mayor and Skip about this project. The sirens were put in the mid-90s. Poles are old, they're starting to rot. Jeff kind of went over, and we don't want them to fall. It'd be bad.
What Phil's saying on that too is when the poles are rotten, it's underground.
It's underground.
You can't see when a pole's going bad.
Yeah, one of the Ingram employees went around with me. We checked them. We got stopped by an Ameren guy. He's like, "What are you doing?" And we explained what we were doing. And he said, "No, do it this way." He goes, "Oh, these are really bad. I'm moving on now because I'm not really supposed to do this for you." But they gave us some little insight, right? That it was time to get them repaired. A lot of these, like the one exactly at Jefferson School, it's sitting right next to somebody's house. Some of them are out in the open, so they're gonna fall if they do fall, which we're gonna try to avoid that. They won't hurt too much as long as somebody's standing there, which they shouldn't be, but nevertheless. The project, I went out and asked the local contractors, request for proposal from them. Nobody's really excited to do this work. This is not something that everybody does every day. It's pretty complex. It involves a lot of heavy equipment. There's a lot of unknowns because not half of the pole, but 10 plus feet of the pole's underground. It really needs to come out, or at least get cut down deep enough and covered up so it can go back to normal. How that's gonna work, there's a lot of unknowns involved in that. The equipment shape on top of those poles has been there since the mid-90s. They work great today. I'm not concerned at all about them. However, when we go up there and move them, we might find some problems that we might not know about. This project is gonna be difficult. We ended up with 2 proposals, one from Pointer Electric out of Jerseyville and one from Scott Brothers here in town. My suggestion at this point is we move forward with replacing with your approval of giving me the latitude to work with Scott Brothers to stay within my budget, and we go out and start working through this to replace the sirens that are in the highest risk. My thought process at this point is that we take down the ones that are at the highest risk and get them out and get a new one put in, so I have a group of set spare parts, and get the rest of them replaced. And I do believe Skip will tell me exactly how much is in my budget this year for that, because apparently it changes sometimes, so.
That's 12 sirens, isn't it?
We got 5 that are the first original ones, but there is a total of 12. But the older, the mid-range ones, they're fine. They were there, but the oldest ones are the ones we're going after. Right. The one at Grand and College has been, it's just gonna have to go away sooner or later. We put sirens around there to cover the way Lynn's Field and stuff, so that one will go away.
We wanted to look at the potential of if one would fall, what hazard would it do? Would it damage personal property or personal safety? So those are the ones Phil started looking at.
And especially the ones that were put in that big group in the 90s at the same time.
Hey, Phil, I noticed in I believe the Pointer bid had a solar upgrade on one of the poles. Is that
So they're both
Only available for that one location?
So both bids are exactly identical responses. The new sirens, we put solar on them, so we don't have to run a meter to them. However, that's, that's what we do. So if
the
any
Scott-
new ones,
The
any
Scott
new
does
ones,
have it.
yeah, any new ones that come after that all have solar, no matter who provides them. They both do.
And I
To
just-
quickly answer your question.
I'd just like to add that Sally's proposal for the water meter upgrades will also be located on the emergency sirens too, so we don't want new equipment up there on bad poles that falls over and we have to replace.
I've already talked to Sally, and she's held off on her project for that. We've been talking, so we've been working together for that.
Thank you, Bill.
That's good, thanks, Bill.
Special studies, Alderman Mountain.
So we had a meeting last Tuesday to get the public input on internet in town, so some feedback on the internet service. And we also covered cannabis social equity. About 10 people came to the meeting. Later on, what I wanted to do was work with the community and work with the members of the committee to create a report and gather all the information to send on to you on the council and share with the city. But some of the things I want to talk about now is in terms of internet. Someone at the meeting told a story about a woman in town had a closed captioning service where she provided closed captioning for network television or network TV. And she was fighting with the internet to try to get the good enough speeds, good enough reliability. And she finally came to the point where she said, I can't do my job here. And she sold her house and left town and took her business with her. So that's just one of the examples that was given, saying how not having fast, reliable internet is affecting the business in town. And I'm sure you all saw in the paper this week that Frontier Communications is considering filing for bankruptcy. So I don't know how that's gonna go on. That's a problem that's bigger than us. But Frontier is a major supplier of internet service in town, and if, I don't know what's gonna happen, but it would impact the ability for the market to provide competition. Other thing, I received an email from one of the lawyers at Ramelkamp and Bradley, and he told a story about they upgraded their office and providing software, and they used to have software on all the computers, and now they do cloud computing. When they tested the move to the cloud, everything was kind of working, but now on most days the internet works fine for them, but sometimes there's some issues with the internet. It's not fast enough, it's not reliable, and what that does is it messes up everyone in the office until the internet gets fixed. So that's just another example of another company in town where if you don't have fast, reliable internet, it affects the business climate. And then wanted to share something in terms of cannabis social equity. One of the major things people talked about was the Department of Economic and CEO, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. There we go. I'll get it eventually. But they have identified mostly the east part of town and north side of town, northeast side of town as previously being impacted by enforcement of cannabis laws, and something the state was trying to make up for past impacts on that community. Some of the projects that people talked about was doing something with the Jefferson Community Center, something to provide kids services in that part of town, maybe provide job training over there. There was also some ideas for looking at Minibar Park and maybe improving the playground there. That's a project that's going on right now with I think the Rotary Club and Kiwanis Club and some others, and the hospital has an initiative on that. Another idea was to put in some beacon walkways, kind of like what we did for Lincoln School at the Main Street. They just had some ideas, but that's something I'll collect and pass on to the council later. And Alderman Adams had someone email him a story from the State Journal Register about the recreational and medical cannabis dispensary over there. They bought the old Outback Steakhouse, for $590,000 to put a dispensary on the west side of Springfield. So that's just to give you an example of the amount of money that's being invested to put in dispensaries, recreational dispensaries, and medical dispensaries. So going forward, if we were able to get one located in town, that kind of investment could be in our community. And more importantly, the jobs, the people who work at the dispensaries get paid really good money. And that's the kind of jobs we want to bring to town. And right now, people from Jacksonville and the area are driving over Springfield and to Quincy and other places to make their purchases, and that's money that could be kept in town. And that's not even talking about the 3% local tax we would put on it. You know, I think having another business in town, having those jobs in town is the most important part of this. Plus saving the people who choose to make the purchase the expense of driving to another community and while they're there, buying other stuff instead of in town. So one thing I asked Alderman Adams, you were talking during the meeting about the 3R
Yep.
grant program?
That's one of the programs that the cannabis equity law did establish, was the areas of the state that were disproportionately affected by drug arrests, poverty. I think recidivism or incarceration was another metric in the formula. And so the north and east side of Jacksonville does apply for that funding, and I believe it's a general fund from the Illinois state cannabis industry to go into these areas to help. The R3 is renew, revive, and reinvest, I believe. And so there is some funding for youth services, civil, legal. There was a couple general categories that we could look, that, you know, businesses can look at on the north and east side to try to apply for funding. I know, like, hobby horse might be one of the things that's available to get funding, type of business in that area to be able to apply for this R3 funding. So that's something that not only can we allocate our local tax to a portion of that, but I think there might be also funding from the state in that area for programs that could help that community also.
Would that money go through the city, or is it just direct from the state to the?
I'm not sure, I think it's, they were taking applications, and I know one of the requirements was just the fact that you live in that area for I think a minimum of 5 years maybe, or something like that. So there are some requirements that are stipulating on who gets the money, but.
Who bought the compact? That wasn't the city's.
And no,
No, it was-
that was
That's
HCI, and that was
HCI.
just for
Yeah.
the building. They still had to put in, you know,
Okay.
hundreds of thousands to
Right.
redo the place, invest in their camera and infrastructure there for all the dispensaries are required to have. And then the article mentioned that it was part of the build out with the recreational portion of the
medical.
because they already have a medical dispensary there, so.
Okay.
And then they were looking at, they just approved at council their on-site consumption, so they already had approved the medical store downtown, and they were looking at applying for on-site consumption at the Outback location possibly in the future, was what the article said. And there has been some interest from some of the constituents in town for an industry type like that as well, that I've heard from already as soon as these articles came out, so that's good.
And Alderman Hopkins and Lonergan, did you have anything you want to say about the meeting?
As far as what they're doing, I mean, just, you know, I know we had a little discussion afterwards, you know, some pretty good places that have an opportunity that might be able to handle all of that, you know, where you're talking about the old Anderson Clayton building and stuff like that. I mean, you know, those are some key places where you have good industry to be able to bring something in like that, and still be a good piece to the community, to a rundown building that hopefully will be renovated.
And then, one last thing, they were talking about, part of the discussion we started out with, talking about the internet, and Alderman Adams brought up some other towns. One town in Idaho had gigabit internet, so gigabit internet service for $40 a month, and another town had it for $80 a month. So that's compared to the speeds and prices that we're paying now. And when I3 came and talked to us previously, they said that they're offering them, their communities that they were coming into was $80 for terabyte or gigabyte internet service. Terabyte's coming, right?
And clarify, that's a gigabyte or 1,000 megabytes of service through fiber optics to residential, which we don't have any residential fiber optics, nor any of the 5 internet service providers planning on offering residential fiber this year in their budget whatsoever, and not anytime soon is what they have said. So we went through this in 2014 when the survey was done for fiber to the home here, and the internet service providers said that they take care of us, but then 6 years later, we still don't have any fiber to any homes.
And I'm sure there's a reason for that. I mean, Cascom's got a great footprint of getting it to business, but there is a reason why they don't provide fiber to the door. And I don't know what that answer is, or they would be doing it.
It's expensive.
It's expensive, exactly. And Governor Pritzker's plan's going to be coming out in about 2 weeks as far as broadband money and the guidelines. So it's gonna be in front of us real quick. I've talked extensively with Jeff Criselli, who says once he gets it, I will pass it forward. And we worry that it's more for rural communities, not Jacksonville size, but more rural, but we gotta wait and see. So there's a lot more to this, and we all want fiber these days, but it's just how much are we willing to spend.
And the other thing to consider also is you mentioned Cascom does have a large fiber footprint to the corporations in Jacksonville, as does Mediacom. Those are the only 2 internet service providers. But are we as a council willing to look at letting Mediacom or Cascom own our fiber infrastructure? And then that way that we're totally dependent on what they say happens with what service we get in our community. So that's something we have to consider also. We are not opposed to letting Cascom or Mediacom or any of the internet service providers use the infrastructure if it was a municipal infrastructure like Hammond, Idaho, where we just put down the fiber. And then that way everyone can use it. And that way we do have the control or the say over what internet service providers and the ability to whose home it goes to and whatnot, so.
One thing to consider is that, I mean, we're competing with other communities. So I3 is moving into Springfield and Chatham. Taylorville has a really good fiber internet company there. So, I mean, if you're gonna locate a business here, or Taylorville or Chatham, I mean, where are you gonna choose? So we wanna make sure that we're on the top of everyone's list. And it's getting to the point where having fiber internet's gonna be the base consideration.
Future-proof infrastructure. We will definitely be using it in the future if we put it in right now.
That's it, thank you.
Very good. Utility, Alderman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One item tonight, discuss IEPA SRF low interest loan final closing amendment regarding the new water treatment plant. Dan's gonna take care of that.
Yeah, that is a long-winded version of simply wrapping up our low-interest loan. The final amendment basically takes the initial amount we were looking at, around $34 million, plugging in the $3 million forgiveness we had and so forth, and finalizing the numbers that we've got for it. Otherwise, there's no changes at all. It's been in place. Water treatment plant's obviously up and running. It's not just a question of paying for it.
Get this off the books.
Yeah.
And we got water.
And we got one.
And we got water.
So is this approving the loan or approving the payment to the company?
It's approving we've approved the loan package. This is just amending that package to the final dollar amount that we owe after knocking out the $3 million forgiveness we've had. We've made some payments and so forth since then too, so.
Thank you.
Any public comment at this time?
I'd like to mention, I talked to, I'm sure most of you are aware, CCK was awarded one of the top honors at the chamber gathering this year. I talked to JJ, and they're pretty low-key people, but boy, he was really excited about that. I mean, they were on their way to Tennessee, and it was him and Sherry were talking, and that's I've never seen them that. I mean, they just do their thing, and but he told me they're getting ready to put a new line in, that they've totally designed everything, including the equipment themselves. So they really are, you know, you should be proud and thank you on their behalf for voting to renew their, re-up their loan. It was a good decision, I think. But, they're doing quite well.
And on that same note, if you get a chance to talk to J.J. Richardson about fiber,
Oh,
he
yeah.
knows. And I think we would have lost them if Cass County couldn't have took care of it.
They have fiber, they do, and because I called him when this discussion started with Alderman Adams and Alderman Lemowski and others, and he says they've had it for some time, but they've gone through, and he said they have 2 or 3 backup systems, whatever that means, yeah, he said, but they're totally covered.
I've talked with JJ too, and I invited him to the special study, and he does have a backup with MediaCom and Cascom, so if Cascom does go down, because it's not redundant, it doesn't have 2 lines coming, one from St. Louis and one from Chicago, so that does mean that they need to have a backup plan, but yes, they are a great business and they deserve the award for the over 25, and I'd like to mention that the under 25 also went to Warmowski Photography, who I don't know if, I think they did everything except build the cameras, so I'd like to congratulate them for their work in the community as well.
Yeah, Steve, good job, very good.
Oh, yeah, they're the non-for-profit this year, who we have a great relationship with Brittany Henry at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, so. And then, of course, Keith Bradbury got the Circle of Excellence, so we all love Keith and yes, sir.
I didn't know if you guys saw it today, but Jacksonville, as well as 5 other communities in the area in a report I made today, as part of the economic opportunity zones in the state. $12 million for anybody wanting to start a business in this area. Plus $20 million from other private interests as part of the capital program by Governor Pritzker.
I caught that, and I think we're gonna have to rally and go at Governor Pritzker about doing something at JDC, because that's in that zone, and we all want that, so I'll need your help on this, it won't be just me.
I'll second that. I'll give a hand to, that's in my ward, and I'd like to see something done with that.
I've written letters to the past as a citizen. I'd be happy to help as well.
Great, thank you, appreciate
I
it.
didn't leave Alderman Lemowski out as far as his award, but we didn't want him to have $1 million. Good job, Steve, yeah.
I wouldn't know to do it.
Sure you would. Got it cool.
All right.
Good job, yes, Steve.
While you're talking with the governor, you should ask him about the Verizon service in town, because.
You don't talk to me.
Okay.
It's a better
Covers
one.
the
you're right.
entire state.
It is.
And this
It's
came
bigger
up
than
when,
us.
when the governor
Bigger
came to
than
town, and he was working on the floods in the spring, that all of his emergency people got down to the river and got down to the area, and then their phones didn't work. So, I mean, you think that.
Phil's probably got a better rapport than me.
I've been in a helicopter with him.
Yeah,
Well, you said there's an excuse
I've tried to
because
meet with them, but
in terms of emergency services, the state can't function properly in this area because of the cell phone service. And it's the same thing with.
Withhold my comments.
When I was at the Illinois College hosted a track meet this weekend, and some of the students visiting from out of town pulled out their phones and they didn't understand why their phones didn't work. And a lot of people who come to town as tourists,
the racetrack,
yeah,
Kenny
said the same
deals with
thing.
it.
That they come to
All the
town
time.
and their phones don't work. So I remember, I don't know if any of you saw the story or the movie Hot Fuzz, some silly movie. But the way the guy got in the train, as he was going out of town or heading on his train out to a rural area, he looked at his phone and the cell phone service got lower and lower and lower, and then there was no service. And that was the indicator of what was a podunk area in this movie. So it's the same thing with Verizon services. When they get here and their phones don't work, they think they're in podunk. So we should see if we can have the state do something to sweeten or carrot or stick or something to make Verizon give good coverage in this area.
Yeah.
You should watch Hot Fuzz, it's a good one.
I'm gonna.
Is it rated PG?
You gotta watch the
Have everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'd ask the clerk to please call roll.
Adams.
Here.
Bartlett.
Here.
Cook. Hopkins.
Here.
Lonergan.
Here.
Odenettle. Scott.
Here.
Wankel.
Here.
Wormowski. Williams. Mayor Izzard.
Here.
City Attorney Beard.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there a reading of the minutes this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask that the minutes be adopted with changes. On the previous minutes from January 13, under the petitions, it did not reflect the fact that I turned in 3 petitions. And if I could just pass around. The changes, the previous said Alderman Adams presented signed petitions in support of Jacksonville's efforts to obtain a medical cannabis dispensary and a recreational cannabis dispensary. And I think it needs to be changed to 3 signed petitions. I do not want to leave out the 40 people that did sign for the on-site cannabis consumption permit or the lounge, and I would move that that be adopted into the minutes.
Second, Alderman Wormowski. All those in favor of approving the minutes with the amendment, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Presentation of petitions
None.
and communications.
No.
No claims tonight.
Man, a few words, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Any public comment at this time? Okay. Consent agenda items, finance, IT, and personnel. Alderman Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have one item tonight, and that's the city treasurer's report for December 31st, 2019 that was in your packet.
And planning and public works, Alderman Scott.
I have one item, resolution authorizing the 2020 MFT street maintenance program for the maintenance of streets and highways by municipality under the Illinois Highway Code.
Public protection, Alderman Hopkins.
We have one, resolution authorizing waiver of advertisement for bids and accepting proposal for emergency siren maintenance and pole replacements.
And utility, Alderman Wankel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 items tonight. Number 1, resolution authorizing payments from the Waterworks Sewages Project Fund for services rendered improvement projects. Number 2, resolution approving IEPA SRF low-interest loan final closing amendment regarding the new water treatment plant, and I so move.
Is there a second under the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull an
Alderman
item.
Hopkins?
Could I pull an item?
Yeah, hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on. Is there any items you wish to pull for further consideration, Alderman
I'd
Hopkins?
like to pull the public protection one, please.
Okay. We'll take that down to committee. And I would ask the clerk to please call roll on the consent agenda.
Adams.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Lonergan.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Wankel.
Yes.
Wormowski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Committee reports tonight. Finance, IT, and personnel. Alderman Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 2 items tonight. The first one is the resolution authorizing payment from the waterworks and sewage. Oh, never mind. Resolution adopting the 2020 operating budget.
Is there a motion or a second on that motion? Alderman Bartlett?
Be it resolved that the 2020 operating budget is hereby approved.
Discussion?
That's for the next one, the appropriations ordinance.
I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Bartlett.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Lonergan.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Wankel.
Yes.
Wormowski.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Item number 2.
Number 2 is the second reading of ordinance making appropriations for corporate purposes for fiscal year 2020 for the City of Jacksonville, Fulton County, Illinois.
Move the amendment
Make an amendment to that
Addition.
to that ordinance, increasing it by $2,153.40. That's just a correction on a salary line item. Need a second on the.
Is there a second on that motion? Alderman Lonergan?
I wasn't told of any capital budget.
Do we need to make an amendment on the 18,000?
No, it's part of the ordinance.
Was that part of the
Yeah,
ordinance?
it's part of the ordinance.
We approved it on first reading, so we have to change it for the second reading.
You've lost me, Steve. What capital improvement items are you talking about?
It was the $18,000 from the.
Was that already in?
I think that was added last time.
Was that in capital
The
improvement?
total, the 2153 takes that into consideration.
But you can't move money around
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of these projects were canceled and they were added at a later time. So this is one of the projects that was canceled and we added it back in, but then when we found out the other, then we changed it back. So there were other projects that are in the capital improvement projects that were canceled in our conversations or our meetings. And we decided to go ahead and put them back in there, which included a vehicle for ESDA was cut and now it's back in. So, you know, that the $18,000 was brought to my attention by the police department because we didn't get their capital improvement budget. I was using last year's numbers instead of this year's numbers. So something had to give.
Right, I'm not.
Not arguing that, but I
Right.
just want to make sure we don't need an amendment for that.
We can't vote on something and then just have something just like, oh, we're just gonna move some stuff around, and then you can just vote on it again. I mean, we're the ones that have to make the changes.
The dollars are the same amount.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
You're voting
Yeah.
on the
So
41 million.
we're voting on the capital improvement money.
You're voting on the
Right, the total amount.
The total amount, the 41 million.
And that's the same as what it was last reading.
Correct.
With the exception of
With the exception of the
2153.40, we're just
That
changing.
we just changed.
Right.
Yeah, so the figures are the same as last.
So what you're saying is that we can go inside the budget, we move $183,000 from one line item and build a trail? Just if you guys want?
If you guys want.
If we want.
No, I mean, we're not talking about us. I mean, if you guys, I mean, there's last time I looked closely at the budget a couple years ago, there's provision that says that the administration can move money around between line items during the year. And so this is something you guys, we can do already. But it's just kind of funny to have us vote on something and then have a change and then not have us to amend it and improve the change.
I just want to let the alderman know you just passed the budget. You just passed the budget.
With the changes?
You just passed the budget with those changes in it.
That first vote that we just did passed that.
Yeah, so
budget.
this vote here is the same as what you just passed. Plus the 10%.
For snacks.
So it's already there.
Bottom number's the same.
Yes. Bottom number is same.
What I said is true then too, that you could just move around to whatever project you want then.
You'll do that
Sorry.
throughout the year. If one of the department heads came in here and wanted to change something, they had a car that they were gonna pick up and they decided, we don't need the car, but we need this because it's more important, they'll come to you and they'll ask you if they can go ahead and get that and take the money that's been done before.
Right, prove it on,
And it'll be done the same way.
and that's basically it only has to go through one reading because we approved the money at the beginning of the year, so we just have to approve the change in later.
Yeah, you'll have to prove the changes.
So we have to prove that change, but we don't have to make the change now.
Correct.
So we have the second reading of an ordinance making appropriations for corporate purposes for the fiscal year 2020 for the City of Jacksonville, Morgan County, Illinois, with amendments.
So we've had the motion and second to amend. We need a vote on that. and then we vote on the final reading.
Do we have a second, Alderman Lonergan, right?
Yeah, Lonergan, I got Cook and Lonergan on the amendment.
Then I'll ask the clerk to please call roll.
This is adding the 215340, Dan? is that
Yes, it
right?
is.
Cook,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Lonergan,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Wankel,
Yes.
Wormowski, Adams,
Yes.
pardon,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Finally, we have the second reading of an ordinance making appropriations for the corporate purposes for the fiscal year 2020 for the City of Jacksonville, Morgan County, Illinois, and I so move.
Second, Alderman Scott.
Be it ordained that the City of Jacksonville does hereby appropriate the sum of $41,131,100.43 for the fiscal year 2020.
Discussion? I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Double checking the numbers, making sure Mr. Beard was correct.
Ouch.
Well, he and I have been, we're back and forth on our numbers quite more than once. Hopkins,
Yes.
Lonergan,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Wankel,
Yes.
Wormowski, Adams,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
motion passes.
Public protection, Alderman Hopkins.
Okay, we have two this evening. On the agenda, it has the presentation from Fire Chief Doug Sills. We're going to move that to the second, please, and I'd like to do the first one with the resolution authorizing waiver of advertisement for bids and accepting proposal for emergency siren maintenance and pole replacements.
Right, is there a second? Alderman Cook.
Be it resolved that competitive bidding is waived and accept the proposal for outdoor warning siren replacement and pole replacements for Scott Brothers, $74,120.
Discussion? I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Maybe go to another page, don't you? Adams,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Lonergan,
Yes.
Scott,
Stay.
Wankel,
Yes.
Wormowski,
Yes.
motion passes.
Very good.
Second on the public protection is the presentation from the Jacksonville Fire Department report from Chief Doug Sills.
Doug?
Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. Guys, I know this is a little bit unorthodox. We've never actually presented an end-of-year report to the full council. Usually it goes to the mayor and the chairman of the Public Protection Committee. But this year's been pretty historic for our department. There's a lot of numbers in here that I feel that I need to address you and kind of paint the picture and put the puzzles where they need to be. If you go through the report, the first page contains our department's mission and vision statements. And those were basically put in there to use as a roadmap or a reference to make sure our department's not getting off base as we move forward with programs and the services and the responses that we provide to the community. The back portion of the report, and I'm just going to give you a cliff note and be brief as I can here, guys. But starting on page 8, we go through the divisional reports through the training, fire prevention, EMS, and logistics and firefighting. Besides in the training portion on page 8, besides the amount of hours that we've logged in training this last year, which averages about 370 per firefighter. Now, we're required to train the guys in order to fit everything in approximately 3 hours a day is what we need to maintain in order to make sure we meet all the standards. Also this year of note is that This is the first year we've actually trained a firefighter to paramedic level. He was hired under our last qualifications that stated you had 18 months in order to attain that certification. That firefighter was able to attain that certification. Some of the other stuff that we're doing in the training division is currently we are just about ready to fully staff a technical rescue team. We're moving from that operations level up to that tech level. Now this team will serve West Central Illinois because the closest team we have to us is about a 2-hour deployment from Springfield, then Quincy, and the next one will be up in Peoria, and Alton also has one. So this will fill a need in this area. That will be consistent of confined space, trench rescue, hazardous materials, rope rescue or vertical rescue, firefighter rescue, structural collapse, and vehicle extrication, all to that technician level.
When you say a team, how many individuals is that?
We are looking at right now of not limiting the amount of numbers. We're trying to get basically guys on each shift that are cross-trained in all these. And then working with Lieutenant Matt Summers, we brought it down to no more than a 12-member team. We feel that'd be sufficient in order to handle anything in this community that we'd run against and give time for those other rescue units or technical teams a chance to respond.
So this is basically a cooperation between several departments?
This is mainly just our department, but through the MABUS division, we would be able to pull those teams out from those areas. But technically right now, if we had anything that went to that technician level, we'd have to sit around for 2 hours until we brought a technician level in. So we're taking care of it in-house. That'll get the ball rolling and give us time to get those other teams responding to whatever the response may be. Fire prevention, which is found on the very next page. Captain Mike Griffiths is our fire prevention officer. He's also the EMS officer. Besides the numerous stuff that we do in the community on a yearly basis, we have seen several programs of ours starting to gain momentum that we offer back to the community, mainly CPR. We offer those to non-for-profit agencies in the community, Boy Scouts of America, anybody that's non-for-profit that requires CPR certification, we're more than happy to provide that for them. Another thing that we've seen an uptick in is health screenings held at various locations throughout the community, utilizing our paramedics to go out there and try to health screen. Mainly these take place at like Laborers Home, Knollwood Development, areas such as that house a large community of elderly. One of the big things that we did, and this started several years ago, we started an RA training program with Illinois College. This went through how to provide medical treatment, fire drills. We actually simulated a dorm fire in a dorm. We were able to smoke one up, give them a visual on what it's like trying to escape a building under certain conditions. We upticked that to provide a burn room this last year, which has been hugely successful. And then working back with McMurray College, we've actually started this past year delivering that program to their facility. So that's been a huge thing for us. And also, if you were at the open house this year, we had probably the best one we've ever had. We also incorporated the burn room there also with the spectators so we could demonstrate how fast fire actually evolves, the importance of smoke detectors, and therefore. On the last page of that report, I also like to include to the mayor a rundown on the investments that the Foreign Fire Tax Board, governed through the fire department, invests back into the department. You can see they invest pretty significantly that items that we don't need to come to city council and budget. So it's a huge asset, benefit the department quite considerably. I've also included a report from Firefighters Local 637 on the various community projects that they're involved in also. Moving forward, If you guys would skip to page 6, and we'll get into the mashed potatoes of the deal. Total responses for the City of Jacksonville in 2019 were 3,288 calls for service. Now, this represented a 10% increase in call volume as compared to the previous year, 2018. We have seen an increase of 70% in our call volume as compared to 2015. And you can see by the graph below how we're charting that up. The response, right below that, you'll see how we've got it broken down into actual numbers as compared to previous years. If you notice, there's been a downturn in the EMS calls, but an uptick in hazardous conditions, service calls, false alarms, and good intent calls. I'm going to put that off to a new reporting program. The previous reporting program relied on operator input. The new reporting program that we have operates directly off of West Central Dispatch CAD. So moving forward, I think we're going to see a truer picture of actually what's going on there, since it's not up to operator error or operator input. If you would like to know in your leisure as you're going through this, second to the last page contains a listing of all the incidents that fall into those categories. So if you're wondering about rescue incidents, for example, you can go to the back page and you can see everything that's related to rescue incidents, or how that's reported into that category. On page 7, we get into responses by district. The notable here is the increase in responses in the West End. We've seen an 18% increase in those responses covered by the substation or in our West District. With the elderly community in that area, I believe that's what's responsible for it. We've got Knollwood Retirement out there, several nursing homes. We've got Cedarhurst out there now. Part of the sub's response district is also the Lincoln Avenue sites. So we believe that's why we're seeing the uptick in responses out there. All given told on all the responses, we're still seeing the same percentage breakdown between fire and EMS. Even though everything's been ramping up, the increase in call volume, it seems the percentages are staying the same, which is approximately 31% fire-related and 69% EMS or rescue-related. The department did respond to 14 calls for assistance outside the city last year, and we received aid from mainly South Jacksonville Fire Department on 17 of our incidents. Response times, and kudos gotta go to kudos here, but West Central Dispatch has done an awesome job. And to give you a little background here, if you look at NFPA standards related to call time, response time, turnout time, you've got about 6 minutes. They want you to take the call in a minute. They want you to turn out, or in other words, after you receive the alarm in the station, they want you on a rig and rolling in a minute, then a 4-minute response time. So they're giving you 6 minutes. Call taking, turnout, and response. We're getting it done in 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Anywhere in the city limits. From response or from alarm to arrival on scene, we're doing it in 3 minutes, 38 seconds. Well within the NFPA standards. Like I said, kudos got to go to West Central Dispatch on that. The most alarming thing that we've been watching the last 3 years was the incidence of overlapping. In other words, incidents coming in simultaneously, or if you have one response out before that response clears, you catch another incident. Huge increase over the last couple of years. Last year, we didn't know how many, we knew it happened 250 times in the calendar year where we had overlapping incidents, and those usually were limited to 2 or 3 incidents at a single time. This year, we saw almost 650 incidents overlapping. We started to see a change also that it wasn't being limited to 2 or 3 of incidents overlapping, but we were starting to see 4s. There was a few 5s and a few 6s in there where we had 6 incidents all stacking on top of each other. The important thing here is that our department never lost or didn't make a response that we were dispatched to. With the way that we have things laid out between the West District and the Main Station District and the way we have our responses coordinated, we were able to handle that call volume without it bringing in any other outside agencies to handle it. So if it gets, it would just something happen we're going to have to track. On the back side of that, we are looking at methods that we can reduce the call volume. We've been working with Pasman Hospital and a few other agencies on getting information out to the public that instead of calling 911, you have a resource that you can call for your particular problem. Also, we're looking at limiting our responses to what we will call tax-exempt properties. A huge amount of our response volume, at least 30% of it, is just tax-exempt properties within the city limits. So we're working with Phil McCarty and probably bring Sarah Brown in on it on how we're going to limit our response to those, whether we're just going to cut out the alpha or the lower level calls and just respond to the more serious incidents at those locations. There again, it depends on the incident, and it's a work in progress.
Can you talk about that a little more?
What's that?
What's tax exempt mean?
Means that these properties pay no real estate taxes or support the city of Jacksonville. There are state institutions, there are other institutions within the community that don't pay a tax or receive tax exempt status.
Like group homes or what?
Group homes, Morgan County Housing, Pasman Hospital, Illinois College, McMurray College.
And those are all fire calls or?
They're calls for service, whether it's a false alarm, a malicious alarm, a small fire, a rescue, EMS, covers the whole gambit.
I remember back in the day when I was at the newspaper and I listened to the scanner, it seemed like you're always responding somewhere for a false alarm, like an IC or something like that. That's still going on?
And there's a difference between false alarms, and we've alleviated a lot of that. But there's a huge distinction in what you would categorize false alarm. Was it somebody pulling an alarm and a malicious alarm, or was it actual system doing what it was supposed to do? Which is a lot of times what we run into, whether it's popcorn in a microwave, oven fire, stove fire, things along that line in those types of facilities. There are the occasional waste paper basket fires and things like that we respond to, but a lot of times the alarm system has activated because there's been something there to activate it.
So if they're making popcorn and it has an automatic response for a fire call, there's no zero incentive for them to fix it because they never get charged anything.
Well, there again, there's nothing really to fix because the system's doing what it's supposed to do. And a lot of times with Illinois College is great about false alarms along that lines with their security force there. The guys will either just get out the door, be halfway in the response, and we'll get canceled. We'll turn around and come back. But that is something that we're currently looking at.
Is that something that needs to be a fee or something like that? Or if you exceed a certain amount of false alarms?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, Alderman Wormowski, we've just now started looking at it, so I'm really not that educated in any of the fees or what the alleviation is or what the solution is going forward.
Okay. Yeah, because I just got, going out for 70% in 5 years is kind of interesting.
Yes.
And I also think, Chief Sills, with West Central Dispatch, they have a great system for tracking that.
Yes.
So you'll be able to track that more to see where you're at and where these calls are so that they can proceed further with what they actually have.
Yeah.
So.
And we're still learning the software program that we got. I had a hard time pulling the numbers out of it to complete this report this year, I'll be honest with you. Anybody that deals with software nowadays, it's like, here you go. Figure it out, and it's trial and error, but we're doing the best that we can on that. And that covers it for incidents in the report, guys. I'm gonna go back to the front here and just hit on a few things. The biggest asset that we had going this year, of course, was our personnel. Through all the transformation that we've continued to move steadily forward and evolve, through all the changes that we've incorporated this past year, our guys can continue to outperform. They work as a team to get the job done professionally and efficiently. They always strive to provide the residents with superior service they deserve and have come to expect from our department. That being said, she doesn't know it, but I added Jenny Fanning's letter to the department on the back page. And that kind of gives you a snapshot of what these guys do on the street. For those of you that don't know, Jenny took a fall this last year, and pretty significant injury, and she was very appreciative of what we had done. The big story of the year, of course, everybody knows, was Big Eli and the Scrambler. Awesome project, year-long project, one that we're very proud of and very appreciative of. That being said, we went in our maintenance in 1 year. The average age of our apparatus prior to this year was 18 years of age. And now we're averaging 3 years of age, with the oldest first line out pumper being 8 years of age. So the maintenance in the fleet has been vastly improved this last year. Along with that, we had 2 apparatus that we moved down the road. We had the 91 E1 and we had the 99 Pierce Heavy Rescue that we surplused out. We did basically went out and asked departments to submit back to us statements of need on where that 99 E1 was going to go. That piece of equipment went to Franklin Fire Protection District. So we were able to help out a local community. Be quite honest with you, Franklin Fire Department has probably about a $27,000 budget. They were very appreciative of the equipment that we were able to donate to them. The 99 Pierce Saber, the best bid we got on it was $25,000. That $25,000 was reinvested back into the department. It completed 2 projects. All the project concerning the portable radios is completed. Everybody now has new portable radios within the department. We've also been able to purchase 2 ventilation fans. Also this last year, the Hurst equipment, some of which was 30 years of age. Hydraulic is a battery-operated hydraulic unit. We're not tethered to any apparatus now. They can be utilized inside of buildings, down ditches, anywhere you need to go or you can carry it to, you can go. We're not handcuffed by the length of the hose. Another notable on equipment, we were also the recipient from Oak Brook Fire Department. They donated $30,000 of equipment back to our rescue task force that we're trying to get off the ground and running. And that was in the shores, tripods, things like that you need for specialized rescue. New programs I'll just touch on real quick. ESO reporting software, that's the software that we were talking about that prior to that software being incorporated, our shift commanders were spending about 6 hours of data entry a day. It got up to costing the city, we figured, about $60,000 a year for them to sit there and do data entry. All that's gone now. Data entry is done by a combination of a feed from West Central and then the guys that actually make the response sit down and fill out the paperwork in real time. No paperwork involved. One of the best things with ESO is it allows us to put in trackers so we can track these future trends. Flow MSP, and I'm going to get to some of these and how they tie together here in a minute. Flow MSP is basically a pre-planning software that we've incorporated this last year. Basically, it allows us to pre-plan an incident before it happens. It's based on construction types, construction methods, building occupancy, hydrant location, hydrant flows, everything you need to know about a building. Mobile data terminals. We've incorporated mobile data terminals into 4 pieces of equipment. Now the information flow from dispatch into those units is instantaneous. As the dispatcher gets it, it's automatically upfed into the MDT. The guys can see the informational flow or the updated information without even talking to West Central. The Flow MSP is also on that that MDT that allows the guys to get the information on the buildings, hydrant locations, address locations while they're responding. The next one, target training solutions. With the uptick in the response level and the battle of trying to get the guys the 3 hours of training today, we went with basically it's a cloud-based training platform so that now we're doing blended courses. So if guys need to get certain training in a day, the shift commander can assign that training, and any time throughout that day, they can sit down at a laptop, computer, or whatnot, get their training in for the day. They can still utilize that with company training. So in other words, they can do the blended course in the morning or throughout the day, and then the very next shift day, we can better utilize time, get the guys together and actually go out and do hands-on stuff. Standard operating guidelines this last year were completely gutted. They're gone. Everything that took place prior to today or prior to this year was built in the 1990s. It made no sense to go in and try to revise it, so we just pitched it away, and we have a new complete set of standard operating guidelines that cover just about everything that we do, from the average response, radio communications, technical rescue, anything that concerns our responsibilities, we've completely revised into a new document. The big one I know everybody talks about is the SAFER grant. This month, matter of fact, this week, we will be completing the second year of that 3-year program. What the SAFER grant has done for us has been immeasurable. It seems like every time we turned around in the last 18 months, we were getting something else thrown at us. With the SAFER grant and those, what I'm going to call now an operational level of staffing that we've come to, we have been able to meet those needs. When the EMS system here in town went away, we were in a position to step up and take that over. Now, if you guys knew what we did 5 years ago compared to what we did today, 5 years ago we were I'm not going to say the laughing stock of the EMS in the city, but today we're what they measure everything else by. There are people in this community that are walking around today because of the SAFER grant. It allowed us to transition into paramedic level of service for the community. It also allowed us to place that additional, here I go additional. It's not additional and it's not extra, but it enabled us to make the substation operational. It allowed us to put that staff exactly where we needed it to meet the response level that we're seeing out there now. Last item I'm going to touch on, and this is going to tie it all together, and I apologize for being long-winded here tonight, but you guys heard me talk about ISO in the past. ISO is the Insurance Service Offices. It evaluates communities according to a uniform set of criteria, incorporating standards developed by NFPA and the American Water Works Association on that community's fire suppression capabilities. This classification is very important to a community in several aspects. Not only does it judge the fire suppression capability of your fire department, it also judges community resilience, the life safety in that community, the quality of life in that community, and also is heavily considered by businesses and developers to determine where to make investments. And this is bittersweet. The last 20 years, we've been a Class 4. We were improved to a Class 4 under then Chief Brad Campbell. Prior to that, under Chief Jim Hyatt, we were a Class 5. I'm proud of the fact that we're now a Class 3. We've improved our classification in this community to a top 10% in the nation. That's huge. Now the bittersweet part of it is, we were 2 points away from a 2. Now the other bittersweet part of it, all the programs that I just explained to you, we only had in place for 6 months and we didn't get credit for them. If we would have got credit for them, we would have been a Class 2.
So next year, we're seeing Class 2.
In 2 years, I can call him back and we're going to see a Class 2.
All right, because he's nodding his head, so I'm going to agree.
But everything, and when I talked to the mayor today, I wanted to elaborate on that. Everything that we have done and everything that we have come to this city council and requested has been planned. If you knock the dust off of this thing that we put out in 2017, as you read through it, you'll see that in 2019, we accomplished 4 of the 6 goals that are in this document that we planned out back in 2017.
It's a real nice 5-year plan.
Yeah. But we had a plan moving forward. And if you looked at the end of the year report from last year, the needs assessment of the department and that needs report were met this year. I just wanted to communicate that we weren't grabbing things off the shelf just to grab things off the shelf. There's been a plan in place, we've worked the plan, and the community is now a lot better because of it. We're not the same department that we were 5 years ago. It's been a top to bottom overhaul, guys. It's been a total flip-flop. I am very proud of what we accomplished. I'm very proud of where these guys are at. But through planning based on community risk, situational awareness, we've been able to overcome every challenge that's been thrown at us. We've been able to meet the changing needs of this community. And we've got an awesome department now, guys. We really do.
I'd agree with you on that, we do.
Thank you for your time.
We have some well-trained individuals on that
Thank you,
department.
Chief.
Yes. It had a great headway on the residential, but it's dropped off. It has dropped off.
What was that?
Our residential knockbox program.
What's that?
So we have a Knoxbox program in the community that serves industrial business. So in other words, it's basically a secure box on the building that has the keys to get into that occupancy. We're the only ones that have the keys to the box. So when we have automatic alarms or we have an incident that goes on in a building that's secured, we have a method to get into that building to either stop the damage, investigate, or do whatever we need to do to alleviate that situation without having to wait on the key holder to show up. So here a couple of years ago, we were having an issue with basically having to break and enter into residential structures to render aid. So working with Knoxbox, we made Knoxbox Residential available in the community. And basically it's a secured box that you can mount on the front of your house, you can hang over the door, that's keyed the same as the industrial or the business Knoxboxes that we offer. So my father used it because prior to his passing, he was a frequent flyer. The guys were down there with him quite a bit. Mom may be there, she may not be there. Yeah, they were able to utilize a Knoxbox within the community. There's other city employees that we've had great success with it also. But further on that, on the residential Knoxbox, that also goes with the Flow MSP program because even residential structures in the community are now pre-planned and we can tag those locations throughout the community. So.
I had 2 questions. I appreciate you bringing up the SAFER grant. I had asked about it last meeting and you weren't here. So
Yes.
Is that something that you're going to update at the end of year 3 when the grant is up about changes in
We're
response?
gonna make
and-
preparations also moving forward and applying for another SAFER grant to try to help keep our staffing level where it is now. And it's too early in the ballgame to really go into it here tonight. But we are looking at avenues to filling that void, or I guess what you would call bring revenue streams in that would help us keep our staffing level where it is at today.
Because did the overtime and all that stuff change in the budget much? Was that influenced by the SAFER grant funding or staffing
The budget
levels?
last year showed a lot of things in it. One of the things that we did show is that we didn't have near as much, I believe, and I'd have to look at it again. We had a significant amount of working out of classification that wasn't in the budget, but that's because we had the MOU with the paramedics after the budget was already approved. So there was 15,000 that went over in that. As far as the overtime and things like that, I believe it was right in line with what we had budgeted.
And this is completely different, but last time we did the code change, we looked at, I guess there was a requirement, or there was a suggested requirement to include sprinklers in new residential construction.
That's up to each and every community, along with economic development and code enforcement, if they want to make that mandate within that community.
Has there been a change in reliability of the systems?
We have a lot of systems in place in the community right now. Every group home that is within the city limits of Jacksonville has and I believe the state mandates it, a residential sprinkler system.
Well, this code was for new residential construction. And I guess one of the issues was you don't want your house to get a shower, that you had to pay for unnecessarily.
Right.
So is that, if the technology's changed or?
It's still the same technology to my knowledge of it. It has increased in the fact that now if you're familiar with PEX plumbing, a lot of it is run in PEX plumbing so that it withstands the freezing and the environmental conditions a lot better than the old rigid pipe.
Because I know you.
But anywhere you have a sprinkler system, you're always going to run that chance of an accidental activation.
Because I know you mentioned with new construction and the new material, it burns hotter and faster, I think, so.
Yes.
Maybe that's something we should consider for the future.
And it's one of the things that I didn't touch on in the report, but if you see our save loss percentage, and if you've seen reports in the back, or previously, our save loss percentage this year, we have at 80% saved versus a 20% lost property. Years previous, we had 95% saved and 5% loss. Now, there's a couple things that kind of changed here. Number one is if you had a waste paper basket fire in a $54 million occupancy, man, that looks huge. You got a $10 loss and a $54 million save. So I didn't think it was giving a true picture of basically grading how we respond, the quick response and all that stuff. So with that save loss percentage, I just brought it down to the residential structure fires and left out the industrial and commercial occupancies in it that could skew the numbers. So it gives a more realistic number. But that being said, modern environment in firefighting today is so drastically changed as compared to when it was 30 years ago. We're seeing the transformation to flashover and fire events occurring in 4 minutes today compared to 15 to 17 minutes 30 years ago. And then if you look at our response times and you're looking at 4 minutes and 35 seconds, even at that astronomical, awesome response time, you're still showing up after an event's taken place. So I hope that answered your question. I know that was kind of roundabout.
Well, yeah, it's just something for the future to, next time we review, I don't know if the next time we review code or before that, if you think it's something that we need to look at, then we should take a look at it, just for the new construction.
Will do.
Thank you, Chief Sills.
Do we get any state assistance for all the calls at the state institutions? Nothing? Okay.
Any old business tonight? Any new
Yes, I'd like to thank the Special Studies Chair, Alderman Wormowski, for holding the special study event with the cannabis and the internet. And one of the things that one of the constituents brought up with the cannabis revenue, he was a visually impaired man and was talking about a public bus route. I just spoke with the director of the Morgan County Housing Authority, who works close with the hospital board, and this morning, and she had asked me if we had thought about any kind of public bus route. Our Morgan County Housing had a van that they used to take the elderly to Walmart and other visits, but if there was something that we could I'd talk with Alan Bradish about maybe talking with the Human Relations Commission about seeing how many people would be interested in a public bus route to connect the public housing and elderly facilities with shopping venues, the hospital area, the YMCA, and the senior center. And last session I got a letter in my alderman folder that was from the High Speed Rail Association, and there could possibly be a bus route going through from Springfield to Quincy with a possible proposed station here in Jacksonville. So a public bus route just for the residents like myself who am on disability and in poverty. So when you look at the ability for me to be able to leave the community without reliable transportation, I literally have to take a taxi or a private plane, because those are the only two routes out of the community if I don't have transportation. So something public just to get us around in Jacksonville, as well as if it comes to fruition with the high-speed rail and the connection in between Springfield and Quincy, could also allow our public bus route to get our community to the proper transportation that could get them around to see family in Chicago or a job in Springfield or any of those instances that might come up. And just a second thing, I'd like to thank the mayor for talking about the Ameren and the streetlights. I worked with the chief of police about going on a ride-along tomorrow with one of the officers in my area, and I could also suggest that the aldermen spend a few minutes with the police department and also getting the streetlights turned back on in their neighborhoods. So thank you.
No, I got one thing for consideration. I was talking to Lori Hartz at the Pasadena Area Hospital. The hospital has a new initiative for community health, and one thing she noticed was that there's people walking in the street to get to the hospital. Westgate would be a nice location to put a bike lane in, maybe even protected at some points with little plastic indicators, or at least some paint on the ground. Maybe that's something we could look at this year, because Pasadena's the largest employer in the town, and walking or biking to work is a nice, healthy alternative, and maybe that's something we could help encourage. Not on Walnut already has a sidewalk on it, so it wouldn't be on Walnut. It'd be on Westgate would be the main thing. I could talk to Alderman Scott about that.
Any other new business?